What if I told you that your U.S. citizenship, the document you worked years to obtain, the status you sacrificed so much for, could actually be taken away from you? I'm Marina Chapelski, founder of the Chapelski Law Group, a team of immigration attorneys serving all 50 states. This topic went viral on my TikTok, and today I'm bringing you the full, detailed breakdown. We're talking about denaturalization, what it is, how it happens, and who it actually affects. If you've ever had a moment of anxiety wondering whether your citizenship is truly secure, this video is for you. You're not alone in this fear. Here's something I want you to know right from the start. Even I, after 33 years as a U.S. citizen, have had moments of anxiety wondering, is there any way I could lose this? And if an immigration attorney with 3 decades of citizenship thinks that way sometimes, I can only imagine what goes through your mind. The fear is real. The worry is valid. But the good news is that for the overwhelming majority of naturalized citizens, we're talking 99%, denaturalization is simply not something you need to worry about. Today I'm going to show you exactly why, and the rare cases where it does happen. The good news. First, before we go into the ways citizenship can be lost, let's start with the reassurance you deserve to hear. The naturalization process in the United States is rigorous. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, conducts thorough background checks, reviews your entire immigration history, and carefully vets your record before approving anyone for citizenship. By the time you took that oath, the government had already looked deeply into your background, the good and the bad. If they approved you with full knowledge of your record. That approval is not easily reversed. So when does denaturalization happen? So if USCIS already reviews everything before granting citizenship, when does denaturalization actually occur? The answer comes down to one word: surprises. Specifically, hidden information. Things that were deliberately concealed during the application process. If something significant surfaces after citizenship is granted that was never disclosed, and that information would have materially affected the outcome of the application, that is when the government can move to strip someone of their citizenship. It's not random. It's not arbitrary. It's almost always tied to deliberate deception during the application process itself. Reason number 1, lying about your identity. The number 1 reason people are denaturalized in the United States is lying about who they actually are. This means using a completely different identity, a false name, a fabricated history, to apply for and obtain citizenship. This isn't a small omission. This is creating an entirely new persona to hide a past that would have disqualified the application. Think about what that involves. A different name, possibly different documents, a concealed immigration history. Everything about the identity presented to the government was a deliberate fabrication. That is the most serious form of fraud in the naturalization process, a real-world identity fraud example. Here's how this plays out in real life. Imagine someone from another country who was previously deported from the United States. Instead of accepting that deportation as the end of the road, they return to their home country, changed their name, obtained new documents, and applied for a U.S. visa under a completely new identity. The consular officers, seeing no prior record under the new name, approved the visa. That person entered the U.S., built a life, married a citizen, and eventually naturalized. On paper, a clean record. In reality, a deportee living under a false name. That deception, when discovered, leads directly to denaturalization. How does the fraud get discovered? You might be wondering, if someone successfully hid their identity for years, how does it ever come out? In most cases, the discovery happens when the naturalized citizen files immigration petitions for family members. The moment you try to bring a spouse, a child, or a relative from your home country to the United States, the government begins cross-referencing records. Files from the original country, prior visa applications, travel history. And that's when the inconsistencies begin to surface. The identity that held together for years starts to unravel the moment immigration officers start connecting the dots across international databases. Countries where document fraud is common. In my years of practice, I've seen identity fraud cases come from virtually every country in the world. People from Cambodia, India, Ukraine, Russia, across Africa, Jamaica, and many others. But in my experience, two places stand out for the frequency of falsified document cases: Jamaica and the Republic of Georgia. In these locations, it has historically been possible to purchase fraudulent identity papers, which then became the foundation for an entirely false immigration history. This isn't a judgment of these countries or their people. The vast majority are honest. But it reflects the reality of what I've seen across thousands of cases in my practice. Reason number 2, lying about something major in your background. The second major reason for denaturalization is concealing something significant about your past, not your identity specifically, but a serious fact about your life that you deliberately left out of your application. This could include undisclosed marriages, hidden criminal history, or membership in organizations that would have disqualified you. The law requires full and honest disclosure during the naturalization process. If you hid something truly significant, something that would have changed the outcome of your application, and it surfaces later, the government has grounds to revisit your citizenship status. The bigamy example. Let me give you a concrete example of this type of concealment. Imagine someone who was married to multiple people simultaneously, what's legally known as bigamy, but claimed to be unmarried or in a single marriage on their citizenship application. Now, years later, one of those spouses files a domestic abuse case under the Violence Against Women Act, VAWA. As investigators begin reviewing that case, they discover the applicant had multiple marriages, some of which predate their naturalization. That discovery doesn't just affect the abuse case, it reopens the citizenship application entirely and can trigger denaturalization proceedings. Terrorist and criminal organization membership. Another serious concealment that can lead to denaturalization is hidden membership in a terrorist organization or involvement in serious criminal activities. If during your naturalization process you denied any connection to such groups, but records, witnesses, or intelligence later reveal otherwise, that misrepresentation can be used to revoke your citizenship. This applies whether the organization's activities took place inside the United States or abroad. The government takes the integrity of the naturalization oath seriously. Swearing to uphold the Constitution while concealing active ties to violent or extremist organizations is one of the most severe forms of naturalization fraud. Reason number 3, joining dangerous organizations after citizenship. Now here's a scenario that's different from the previous two. This one doesn't involve lying on your application at all. If you become a member of a communist party, another totalitarian organization, or a terrorist group within 5 years of becoming a U.S. citizen, your citizenship can be stripped. The 5-year window after naturalization is a protected period during which your civic loyalty and conduct are still being established. Joining extremist or anti-democratic organizations during this window is treated as evidence that you were never truly committed to the principles you swore to uphold during your oath of citizenship. What qualifies as a dangerous organization? So what exactly falls under this category? We're talking about communist parties, totalitarian political parties, and organizations formally designated as terrorist groups. This includes both domestic extremist groups and foreign organizations with ties to political violence or terrorism. The key factor is that your involvement, whether through membership, financial support, or active participation, must be proven. Simply having political views that differ from mainstream American politics does not qualify. The standard is formal association with groups that operate against the foundational principles of U.S. democracy. Most law-abiding citizens, including new ones, never come anywhere near this threshold. The Nazi war criminal case. Let me share one of the most striking real-world denaturalization cases I know of. There was a man from Ukraine, nearly 90 years old, who had lived in the United States for decades as a citizen. Investigators eventually uncovered evidence that during World War II, in the 1940s, he had worked at a Nazi concentration camp. Despite his persistent denials, multiple witnesses came forward and identified him. He was ultimately denaturalized, deported, and eventually stood trial in Israel. This case illustrates that denaturalization has no expiration date when the underlying crime involves crimes against humanity. The Cambodian War General case. Another case that came through my own practice involved a client from Cambodia. This individual was suspected of being a high-ranking military general who had been involved in the torture and killing of civilians. Allegations of war crimes are treated with the utmost seriousness by the U.S. government. When credible evidence links a naturalized citizen to atrocities, genocide, mass torture, organized killing, the Department of Justice's Office of Special Investigations has the authority and the mandate to pursue denaturalization, regardless of how many years have passed. Citizenship is a privilege, and war criminals are not entitled to keep it. Who is actually at risk? After hearing all of this, let me bring you back to the reassurance I started with. The people genuinely at risk of denaturalization fall into a very small and very specific category. They are people who deliberately fabricated their identity, people who knowingly concealed serious criminal history or organizational ties, people who committed war crimes or acts of terrorism and lied about it, people who joined extremist organizations after becoming citizens. If none of those descriptions apply to you, and for the vast majority of hardworking, law-abiding immigrants, none of them do, your citizenship is safe. This is not something you need to fear. The denaturalization process itself. It's also worth understanding that denaturalization doesn't happen overnight or without due process. The government must bring a civil lawsuit against the individual and prove, in federal court, that the citizenship was obtained through fraud or misrepresentation. The burden of proof rests with the government. The individual has the right to legal representation and the right to present a defense. This is not an administrative snap decision. It is a formal legal proceeding. That said, when the evidence of fraud is strong and well documented, the courts have consistently ruled in favor of revocation. The process is fair, but it is serious. The lesson: honesty is everything. If there is one takeaway from everything we've covered today, it is this: honesty during the immigration and naturalization process is not just the ethical choice, it is the only safe choice. The U.S. immigration system has long institutional memory, extensive international partnerships, and sophisticated cross-referencing capabilities. Secrets that held for 10 or 20 years are regularly uncovered when family petitions are filed, when databases are updated, or when witnesses come forward. The people who lose their citizenship almost always had a moment early in their journey where they chose deception over disclosure. That choice can define the rest of their lives. What to do if you're worried? If anything in this video has made you concerned about your own situation, maybe there's something in your past you weren't fully transparent about, please do not ignore that feeling. The worst thing you can do is wait for the government to find it first. Speak confidentially with an experienced immigration attorney. There may be options available to you, depending on the nature of the issue, how long ago it occurred, and how material it was to your application. An attorney can assess your specific situation and advise you on the best path forward. Acting proactively is always better than waiting to be investigated. Closing call to action. And that is the full picture on how U.S. citizenship can be lost through denaturalization. 3 core reasons: lying about your identity, concealing something major in your background, or joining dangerous organizations after naturalization, cover the overwhelming majority of cases. Remember, if you went through the process honestly and have nothing hidden, you have nothing to fear. I'm Marina Chapelski from the Chapelski Law Group, and my team is here if you ever need immigration guidance across all 50 states. If this video was helpful, please like it, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on Instagram for shorter updates. See you in the next one.